Welcome to another edition of the Mr. Chris Show, Voice of the Underground. So, let's get right into it. There's been some things going on, but it's also been strangely quiet as well, too. So, we have all sorts of things to talk about. We have Beijing Joe, we have total California recall, we have vaccines, and we even have unidentified flying objects. And you might say, well, what's this all about? Well, going back some years, this is where the Mr. Chris Show actually got its beginning. And I've actually spoken to many people in the paranormal, metaphysical field, ufology, and it was kind of put on the back burner, and then all this political stuff sort of started to emerge last year, and then that sort of took the front stage. But I think at this point, we can cool off just a little bit, and we can see how this actually ties in to the politics. So, let's start off with Beijing Joe. We got Beijing Joe, we got Bozo Joe. So, he has various names, but of course, we know it's a sad joke and it's a cruel joke, but it's a joke. Okay? And the only person who doesn't know it's a joke is Beijing Joe and his diehard supporters. And you know the people out there. Yeah, I saw you the other day. Yeah, but he's out. Yeah, that guy's he's doing some good stuff out there. You know. So anyway, and of course the deep left who sit there and say, you know, that we should only eat some kind of stuff that's grown out of the ground and maybe like the excrement of maggots or something like that, because we shouldn't be doing anything else, and you know the people. But anyway, Beijing Joe has been stumbling. He's been saying a lot of strange stuff, and recently he even said something about minorities not being able to get online and to be able to find places to get the vaccine. So let's think about that for a minute. What if Trump was to say something like that? Do you think there would be outcry? You know, mainstream media would have him crucified in seconds. But Beijing Joe, we let this thing kind of happen. He also just walks off stage. He doesn't look at the camera properly. He doesn't even know where he's at. So, as I mentioned before, the replacement, okay? And I think what's happening now is the deep state is kind of giving Joe a little send-off. I think that they're letting him self-destruct, and the mainstream media is allowed to propagate this. And of course, the end result of this is the 25th Amendment to remove him as acting, don't know what to call him exactly, actor president, but it's to take him out and to put in Big Mother. You know, there's 1984 Big Brother. Well, you know who Big Mother is. And I believe that's what the deep state is engineering right now. So this is a method to let him implode and take him out gradually and nicely. And of course, it's compassion. That's what will be seen. Because the left always likes to reword things. So you have, when you want to kill somebody with end of life, you call it, oh, well, it's compassionate. You know, they've left a good life, and they could be in pain, so let's just end their life. It's all kinds of stuff. We're not going to get completely into that right now. Another time. But I think they're going to retire him in placement of her. And we'll see if that happens. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I kind of see the tea leaves, and I'm reading in that way. Other people really aren't, but I am. So, total recall in California, okay? Do it now, you know? So, this is the thing that we've seen, a bunch of signatures to recall Governor Newsom in California. And there's enough signatures, but there's a little funny catch with this kind of stuff. Unlike the presidential election, it's a very minor election. We don't worry about it too much. That one in California did not require signature verification, okay? It's a trivial election, right? But for the recall of nuisance, that is going to require signature verification on mail-in ballots. You got to ask yourself a question, do these people really think we're that stupid? Now, there's obviously some people out there that, yes, are that stupid and they don't know the difference, but you're not, and you know the difference, and it's amazing what has gone on. So, hopefully that'll go forward, but, the way the system has been rigged, who knows what kind of replacement there's going to be in California. Don't expect somebody who's really good. That's the only thing for you people that live there. The Titanic, whether you see that as the United States and or California and New York or all of it together, not really certain, but, there's enough problems there. So, where does this tie into everything else? Well, we have the vaccines, and the vaccines are something that, if you remember, at first, Trump met with the pharmaceuticals in 2020 and was asking about the timetable. We can't get out, that's going to be approximately 5 years, sir, or something like that. So, there was all this kind of talk, and then it was sped up, and, we can do this and we can do that. Of course, they were probably already working on these things back in 2019 to go along with the pandemic, but I digress. So, when it comes to the vaccine, then finally, towards the end of the year, Trump said, well, I think that the vaccines are only just a few weeks away. The media would be out there. Remember, they were pitchforks. No, he's an idiot. He doesn't know what's going on. No, it's as early as spring, maybe, for the first of it and such. Well, we saw that all wrong. Now, Beijing Joe, he was actually quoted in January of 2021 saying that when he took office, there were no vaccines. Although he got his shot of whatever it was, saline solution or something, 2 months prior to that, roughly. So, of course, they let it go. They let him speak on CNN because they want to replace him. So this is all fair. Okay. So, the vaccines. Well, to understand the vaccines, we need to take a look at vaccines in general. So there's basically several types of vaccines. And in general, there's four main types. We have the live attenuated vaccines, the inactivated vaccines, the recombinant, the subunit vaccines, and the toxoid vaccines. So, what does all that mean, right? Does it mean anything? Is it just meaningless? Well, no, there's actually something to that. So, you have different types of vaccines that handle different types of bacteria and virus infections, right? So, live vaccines, the live attenuated vaccines, those are actually, I don't want to say cousins, but they're related to what it is you're trying to protect against. In this case, that would be chickenpox, smallpox, rotavirus, measles, mumps. So that is actually a cousin of it. It's a live strain. You're injected with it. Your body gets a response, takes care of it. The inactivated vaccines, that would be something where it's dead. They take the bacteria, virus, and actually in this case, the viruses really don't, you can't really say they're alive, but they're activated. That would be hepatitis A, flu shot, polio. And there's reasons, I suppose, why they use inactivated versus live. I don't think they want to give a person polio, per se. Then you have this subunit type, and this one is kind of an odd one, of course, but nevertheless, this is the type that handles things like HPV, whooping cough, meningitis, shingles, and then finally there's the toxoid vaccines. The toxoid vaccines are a toxin, and that is for like diphtheria and tetanus. So I should mention the one before that, though, that we just talked about, the subunit one. That's actually, they call it subunit because it's a fraction of the strain. So it's fractioned off, not complete. And there again, I'm not a biologist, but there's reasons for it that causes immune response. Then you have the brand new one, the new one on the block, the messenger RNA. So the messenger RNA is a different kind of beast altogether. Of course, it has been researched for many years, and you'll see the mainstream media say, oh, this has been around for decades, yes. Well, it has been around for decades, but it has not been used in humans for decades. This is the first time we've seen it used in humans. And do you really want to be a guinea pig for the first time, really? And this is something that has a survival rate, as we know, is 99%, and even the mainstream media now admits to this in little dark corners. But the point is, this messenger RNA produces in your body a spike protein. The spike protein mimics what the supposed C19 looks like and makes a response for it, and then if you should come across it, your body's prepped for it. That's what it says on paper. That's the idea behind all this stuff. Have we seen this kind of stuff before in sci-fis? Go to Will Smith's I Am Legend. In I Am Legend, the whole debacle, the whole demise of the human race pretty much is related to a virus. And I'm not going to give it away exactly what's going on, but that is the basis for what has happened in that story. And it was supposedly this monumentous achievement, but look what has happened. So I wanted to quote something because there's a lot of misunderstanding about the mRNAs. And there's, of course, people that say, oh, it modifies your DNA. I've looked up information where they say it doesn't appear to modify the DNA. Now, what does that mean exactly? It doesn't appear, okay? I think that's an easy way of saying we don't know, we're going to cover ourselves, but let's keep the guinea pig trials going. So it turns out that there's a researcher named Matthew Miller, and he has said something which is kind of interesting. This comes out of Canada, and he is a professor, associate professor of infectious diseases and immunology at McMaster University. In an email, he has said, quote, that has led some researchers to propose that injection with a retrovirus agent retrovirus might theoretically provide the proteins necessary for the integration of mRNA, although that is considered extremely unlikely. And then he goes on to say something which is even more astounding, and he says that there is one kind of microbe that can produce DNA from RNA, retroviruses such as HIV. And the DNA generated by retroviruses can sometimes integrate into cells. So what does all that mean, right? Well, that simply means that there is a type of retrovirus that can mess with the DNAs. And this is a possibility. So this is a concern. Now, of course, this supposed vaccine, is not particularly a retrovirus, but what does everybody know about it for sure? It has not been tested long enough. We don't know the implications. We don't know what happens to a person who may carry on those genes to somebody else. You know, these are things, and they're rather dangerous in my opinion. And this is just flippantly, he's like, well, let's just do this. And the sad thing is with all this is that all this virus stuff, all this vaccine stuff, you get vaccinated. The vaccines are actually meant to treat the symptoms. The vaccines do not necessarily prevent infection. And this is what I'm leading to. So if you have the vaccine, supposedly you can still be infectious. You can still get an infection and you can pass an infection. Now, recent articles have been saying there could be some benefits where you don't pass an infection along. But there's also a study of 1 million patients we saw from late last year that was concluded that basically said that asymptomatic transfer did not exist. So this is the kind of stuff that they're using against you. I just wanted to make it known because they're saying vaccine, 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 but then mask, mask, mask. So if the vaccine treats the symptoms so you don't get it so severely, that's what they're saying, then what's the point of the vaccine? If you only have a small % chance of serious illness or mortality, it seems kind of ridiculous. And people say, oh, well, but I know somebody who tested positive and they got sick, I knew this and that. We don't know anything, okay? All we know is what it says from a supposed paper that comes back or an email as far as a test result. And that means nothing. When you can have a goat and a piece of fruit test positive, and you can have a person test negative, positive, depending on what hour of the day they take it. And there's a woman who had a double lung transplant who the donor tested negative, but the person supposedly ended up getting it and died from it. So there's so much out there that we don't know, and it's so crazy. But you want to be the guinea pig? That's my question for you. So I don't think I do, and I know a lot of people that don't either. Well, let's move it along a little bit and talk about SCOTUS. There was a SCOTUS rejection of the appeals, especially the ones for the voting fraud in Pennsylvania. This was expected, at least I expected this to happen, and I think a lot of other people did too. And it's unfortunate, but it sends a clear message. They don't want any part of this. They're done. They're not going to look at this. Hands off. Now, you might think, well, how could this be? Well, we obviously have two different groups in the Supreme Court. We have Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch, and they together have dissenting opinions that said, no, we should be looking at this. We should explore this because there's some serious issues, especially in Pennsylvania, that need to be addressed, otherwise it affects future elections. And this is a concern because there may never be a fair election again, and it could propagate out to other areas. We see other states that are buying Dominion machines. So where does this go? It actually goes pretty far and wide. Now, people say, well, but, this is all part of the plan, and everything, and this is it. And we've heard that. I know that you're probably sick of hearing about that stuff, but I haven't seen too much proof recently in the so-called plan. The only thing I've seen that would lead to still some belief in this would be the fact that Air Force One is still a commercial airliner, is not squawking as Air Force One in the radar, which is odd. And we have the cryptos going crazy. We should have a whole show about that, but we have the cryptos going off the charts, out of sight. And then we have talk about this quantum financial system, Jasara, coming online. Is that fantasy land? Not really sure. I'm starting to see articles about it. But one thing's for certain is that the cryptos are here to stay one way or another. And you have Elon Musk putting in $1.5 billion or whatever it is in this. So I think that there's enough to this. I think that at least there is something happening in the financial markets, whether this has to do with any sort of plan and Super Trump returning, like Superman and righting the wrongs, who knows. But if the political system, if the election system stays as it is, it would not matter to have a so-called free and fair election in 2024. Unfortunately, the way I see it, 2024 is going to be the Biden-Clinton ticket, Hillary Clinton, that is. So that's unfortunately what I see in the tea leaves once again. And it's hard to say. There's a variety of movies. I mentioned The Running Man before, but there's plenty of other interesting movies out there. And, there's a lot of different types that aren't completely deep state brainwashing tools. If you go back to Ayn Rand's, and unfortunately there is a movie, there's a 3-part movie for The Fountainhead, and it just does not capture the book. The book I know is long. You can get an audio book if you want it to be read to you, and that is probably the best work that describes, shows, and is related to what is happening right now in the United States and in the world. Highly, highly recommended. Of course, there's smaller works, Fahrenheit 451 by Bradbury, and there's others that are great as well too, that give you an insight into it. Everybody says 1984. There's a lot more works out there than Orwell's work. Animal Farm is a quick read. That one's interesting, and that one is also pretty good too, by the way. Those are my picks, by the way. You know, there's a Seinfeld where they had Vincent picks and such, and it's a very good episode if you ever come across it. Look it up. So, what is going on in the skies? Well, that is something that I would like to know as well too. People talk about them as UFOs, they say flying saucers. The Pentagon has actually admitted to some of this recently. People are saying that, oh, these are false flags to get you diverted and such. Whatever it is, I want to report on it. Just to let you know, there was an article that came out, I think in The Guardian, the end of last year, about a radio signal that was picked up, supposedly from Proxima Centauri, which is 40 light years away. It was a radio signal, 900 some odd megahertz. It was discovered in 2019. And here's where all the tie-in is with this stuff, which kind of intrigues me, is that this was picked up by a researcher, and this researcher was at Penn State working for this breakthrough Listen, which is funded by a billionaire. So Yuri Milner, I believe the name is, billionaire. This signal, known as BLC-1, Breakthrough Listen Candidate 1, was a simple tone, but it was measured on every pass, and this was from a radio telescope down in Australia, I believe it was. So they're thinking it did not come from a microwave in the next room, as things have been picked up before and such, but it was something else. But I can tell you, based on my knowledge and background, that a continuous tone like that is essentially nothing unless the person who built a transmitter on Proxima Centauri didn't know what they were doing. There's no conveyance of information. You know how there's the Morse code, the SOS, ... Even if you don't have the ability to modulate a signal, like to put like AM and FM signals, radio signals, such that the carrier is changed with information, if it was just a tone, you would still break the tone up and you could have information that way. This didn't have that. This was a continuous tone. So unfortunately, it does not contain any information. It does not have any modulated information to where you could use it and say, oh, there's an encoded signal here, there's data, there's something that we can decode. It doesn't have that, unfortunately. So unfortunately, that one, I'm going to fact check it myself and say it's a dead end, debunked. But there is something that's not a dead end. Anthony Braglia filed papers, Freedom of Information Act, back in 2017. The Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, responded, finally, in the latter part of 2020. What they came back with was pretty astounding. Now, of course, a lot of it's redacted. Apparently, it's a 154-page document. And the document goes into all sorts of interesting little tidbits of details, but things that are not totally complete. However, there is the discussion of materials from unidentified flying object debris that they're not saying where it's from, they're not saying who's behind it. However, it's something that has been picked up, transferred, and now studied in the U.S. And I'll get to that in a minute because of all these tie-ins. I talk about the tie-ins. So, there's a lot to this, but quickly, there is a metal of some sort called nitinol. The nitinol metal was found, and this also corroborates stories from the Roswell crash in 1947. Basically, it's a memory metal, something that you could twist, bend, and it would go back to its original shape, but is otherwise pretty strong. Now, of course, my question, if it was pretty strong, why do you have debris? So, who knows? But there's other more interesting facets to this that was found, and that was other materials known as metamaterial. These metamaterials have 4 properties that they're talking about. One, it has the ability to slow down light and even bring light to a complete standstill. Now, mind you, this is all in the documentation that this gentleman acquired. I don't have copies of the documentation. I believe that he's probably going to be turning this into a book or a movie or something to earn $1 off of, and that's great. That's his business. He went out there and he got it. So we have that. We have, may induce the invisibility of manipulating refraction is another thing that this metamaterial can be. Not so much this nitinol possibly, but another type of material. It's not really clear. As a third property, and the ability to compress electromagnetic energy, which can actually has implications as well. And then finally, it exhibits a tunable resonance, which the tunable resonance is something where you can get a large amplitude from a small stimulus. So this could be something about a pulling energy or pushing energy type of material and such, which is something that, we don't have. At least I don't think so. But these metamaterials, this is something that is in the document, and there's one other, which is amorphous metals. Where have we heard of amorphous metals before? Let's go back to Terminator 2, the liquid Terminator. That is an example of a liquid metal or an amorphous metal. So this is where the tie-in happens. The contract for all this research, according to the DDIA documents, is a person known as Bigelow. And this person is the owner and founder of this Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas. Now, supposedly, the materials were taken there and studied, and this is part of what's in the report. Now, the interesting thing where this ties into is Skinwalker Ranch. Skinwalker Ranch is an area in Utah that was formerly owned by Bigelow. Bigelow sold it because of too much paranormal activity that he noticed there with him and his family, and he dumped it. He dumped it a few years back, and it turns out that it went to another billionaire, a Brandon Fugel. This person actually is very open about it and wants it explored, and went in league with the History Channel in order to make a series in 2020. I have not seen it. I need to look it up. But he's very interested in getting to the bottom of this. And supposedly there's heavy microwave radiation in the area. There's lights. There's all kinds of things that can be seen from this area. So these things and these people are all tied together somehow or another. We have signals that billionaires are funding to go find. We have other billionaires that own companies that are in contract with the government for these strange materials. And we have other billionaires who buy those properties and they want to further explore it. So, what does all that mean? That means that I believe this is not fantasy, this is not science fiction. I don't think it ever was science fiction. And when you look at the stars in the night, to think in the universe it's ever possibly expanding, that we're the only people, I think that's pretty short-sighted in my opinion. So I'm going to be exploring more of this, presenting more of this, and we'll tie it in, because this is something that has been censored and has not been shown in a long time. And the government, I think, has been very careful to dole this out, and also to present things through movies, through books and such, a little at a time, to get you used to the fact that you're not alone. That's my take on it. Maybe I'm completely wrong, who knows. But I know that we need to stay vigilant. We need to keep prayer. We need to do our best. Talk to your legislators, email them, tell them you're not happy with this, we're not happy with that bozo, and you want a system that's cleaned up. And at some point, hopefully that can happen. And we'll talk next time right here on the Mr. Chris Show, Voice of the Underground.